Hello. How are you today? Great. So, I thought I would go over another mystery and disappearance today. So, this is one of my favorite stories. It's one of the most interesting ones to me, at least. So, I thought I would go over the disappearance of John Benet Ramsey. And then some of the theories behind that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about John Benet Ramsey, and then kind of talk about what happened, and then also some theories about what happened. So I hope that you enjoy. So the Ramsey family lived in Boulder, Colorado. John and Patsy had 2 children, Burke, who was 9, and John Benet, who was 6. So they lived very well, and according to the financial records of the Ramsey family computer, John was worth around $6 million, and John was a former president of Access Technologies, a company that he had recently sold to Lockheed Martin. And Patsy was a stay-at-home mom and a former beauty queen, Miss West Virginia, in 1977. They were extremely social and threw parties in their home quite often. So this is the Ramsey's memory of events about what happened. So on Christmas night, 1996, John, Patsy, and John Benet Ramsey drove to their Boulder, Colorado home a few blocks from a party at a friend's house. 6-year-old John Benet fell asleep in the car. So her parents carried her into the house and up the stairs to her bedroom. John and Patsy went to bed soon after. They planned to rise early and prepare for a trip to their second home on Lake Michigan. The next day, Patsy awoke just after 5 a.m. and went to the kitchen. On the staircase, she found a 3-page note that said that John Benet had been kidnapped by a small foreign faction and was being held for ransom of $118,000 and would be executed if the money was not delivered. John Benet would be exchanged for the money on December 27th, the next day. Patsy yelled to John as she ran back up the stairs and opened the door to John Benet's room. Finding her missing, John and Patsy decided to phone the police. The 911 dispatcher received Patsy's call at 5:25 a.m. The police arrived at the Ramsey's home 7 minutes later. So a little bit about the ransom note. Detectives determined that the note had been written at the house on a pad of paper found in the Ramsey's kitchen, with a Sharpie pen also found there. The amount of money demanded in the ransom note was considered unusually low by investigators due to the Ramsey's wealth. One theory is that the amount matches a bonus that John Ramsey received that year. Another theory is that the amount resembles his liabilities listed on his home computer at $1,118,000, and the amount demanded was actually broken down into denominations: hundreds, 20s, 10s, etc. So investigators took writing samples from dozens of people, including John and Patsy Ramsey and their son, Burke Ramsey, John Ramsey's children from his first marriage, John's friend, Fleet White, and Bill McReynolds, who portrayed Santa Claus at the Ramsey's Christmas party, neighbor Joe Barnhill, and over 60 other individuals. So John Ramsey was cleared by handwriting experts as the note's author, but Patsy's status was not as straightforward. Despite having at least 5 of Patsy's handwriting samples, along with historic samples of her writing, they would not say that the author was Patsy. But neither could say that the author was not Patsy. So there were now other matches identified. Investigators focused on Patsy as a suspect for this reason. They asserted that her handwriting changed after the murder. According to Boulder police investigator Steve Thomas, the most significant evidence in this case was the pen, the pad, and the ransom note, and the handwriting. And when we finished an investigation after 18 months and presented our case to the district attorney's office, presumably for them to move it forward, one statistic that was cited in the presentation, there was only one whose handwriting showed evidence to suggest authorship who was in the home that night, who couldn't be eliminated as the author, and that was Patsy Ramsey. So Steve Thomas left the Boulder Police Department as a result of frustration over this case and went on to write a book about the case and why he believed that Patsy Ramsey was guilty. So all parties agree that the author of the note murdered John Benet. Therefore, Thomas's assertion that Patsy Ramsey wrote the letter, along with his perception of the Ramseys' lack of cooperation, leads to his belief of Patsy Ramsey's guilt. So, a little bit about the police investigation. The Boulder City Police conducted a cursory search of the Ramsey home, but did not find any obvious signs of a break-in or forced entry. Following this search, the police reportedly allowed friends and family into the Ramsey's home, and they did not seal off any parts of the house. In the meantime, John made arrangements to acquire the ransom, which a friend, John Fernie, picked up that morning from a local bank. In the afternoon, a Boulder police detective asked Fleet White, a friend of the Ramseys, to take John Ramsey and search the house for anything unusual. They started in the basement and checked the bathroom and train room. The two went into a wine cellar room where John found his daughter's body covered in a white blanket. The body of John Benet was removed later that evening after the issue of a search warrant, and with the consent of the parents. So the autopsy findings showed that John Benet was killed by strangulation or a skull fracture. So a garrote made from the length of a nylon cord and handle of a paintbrush had been used to, skip that part. So the brush end of the paintbrush was found in a tub of Patsy Ramsey's art supplies, but the top third was never located despite extensive searching of the house by law enforcement in the subsequent days. It was noted by experts that the construction of the garrote required a special knowledge of knots held by sailors or other experts. Investigators considered that John Ramsey likely knew how to tie this knot from his considerable experience with sailing. The autopsy also revealed that the child had eaten pineapple only a few hours before, of which her mother and father claimed to be unaware of. There was a bowl of pineapple on the kitchen table with a spoon in it. Neither Patsy nor John remembers putting this bowl on the table nor feeding it to John Benet. So, let's see. So some of the crime scene evidence, a broken basement window was found. According to John Ramsey, he had broken the window once when he locked himself out of the house, but investigators were unable to confirm how long the window had been broken. Investigators found a spider web outside on the window well grate. Police tests indicated that sounds coming from the basement could not be heard in the master bedroom. There is one report that a neighbor heard a scream, but no further information was available. The two dissimilar footprints in the wine cellar that did not match any of the shoes in the residence, a third footprint of an unknown person on the outer part of the broken window of the room by the wine cellar, and a possible footprint on the suitcase placed directly below the same window was found. One of the footprints found by detectives near John Benet's body in the wine cellar was believed to be a high-tech hiking shoe. Reportedly, no one amongst John Benet's family, friends, or acquaintances owned a shoe that matched the print. A rope that was foreign to the residence was found on the bed of the guest room near John Benet's room. The other part of the paintbrush used on John Benet was found in Patsy Ramsey's art supplies. A later theory emerged that the physical marks on John Benet's body suggested the use of a stun gun. A palm print was found on the wine cellar door, but none of the prints taken from family and friends matched it. The duct tape and cord used were not found in the Ramsey's house. Evidence was discovered that John Benet may have had Alright. So the Ramseys both said that their son, Burke, was asleep in the morning of December 26th until his father awakened him to take him to the White's house after police were called. But an enhanced version of the tape of Patsy's 911 call seems to reveal Burke's voice in the background, asking what's going on. So Patsy and John left the home, now an official crime scene, to stay with friends. Once John Benet's body was released to them for burial, they returned to their hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, to bury her there. They returned a week later or so, but before they left, they were interviewed by the police on December 26th and 27th. On December 27th, they provided also physical evidence, blood, hair, and fingerprints. Based upon unfolding events, friends of the Ramseys engaged legal counsel for the couple. Police focused on the Ramseys immediately as suspects for several reasons, possibly including the statistic that 9 out of 10 murders in homes are committed by someone living in the home. Early police statements also indicated that they found no footprints in the snow around the house, although it was later shown in the crime scene photographs that the walkways to the house were clear. Additionally, police found no evidence of breaking and entry. Upon their return, the Ramseys voluntarily provided 5 handwriting samples. Their desire to cooperate diminished. However, as it became clear that the police and media focused solely upon them as suspects, police investigators point to this lack of cooperation as a reason for suspicion. In 1998, the Ramseys, who had to date refused to take a polygraph exam, agreed, but only if the test was administered by an independent expert. They argued that the FBI was not independent. Both Patsy and John Ramsey passed the exam, but the Boulder police rejected the results, questioning the methods and the questions asked. In fact, Patsy and John were asked different questions, which, according to the former investigator Steve Thomas, is unusual. Thomas asserts that it took Patsy 3 attempts and 2 examiners to pass her polygraph exam. A grand jury was convened and heard evidence for a year. After deliberating for 4 months, the grand jury returned no indictments. Burke Ramsey was interviewed extensively by the grand jury and reportedly cleared of suspicion. According to the Boulder police, they formally interviewed more than 6,000 people in this case, investigated about 140 potential suspects, logged about 1,400 items of evidence, and built a file approximately 40,000 pages long. So in 2008, Touch DNA technology tests revealed that new DNA collection from a pair of long johns, which John Benet was wearing when her body was found, matched a sample previously taken from the child. So Boulder County District Attorney Mary Lacey said that the unexplained third-party DNA on the clothing of the victim is very significant and powerful evidence. It is therefore the position of the Boulder District Attorney's Office that this profile belongs to the person who committed this crime. Lacey blamed evidence reported by the media rather than evidence that had been tested in court for suspicions cast on the Ramseys as the case was investigated. Suspicions that she said created an ongoing nightmare for the Ramsey family and their friends. Lacey confirmed that no one in the Ramsey family was considered a suspect and formally apologized in a letter to John Ramsey for the cloud of suspicion his family has lived under for nearly 12 years. So that is a little bit about the case. Now I'm going to go through some theories of who they think did it. So as was discussed in, that a little bit about the background. So a lot of people thought that the mother, Patsy Ramsey, took whatever secrets of that morning she had with her to the grave when she passed away after a 13 battle with ovarian cancer that eventually spread to the brain. So though both she and her husband John were formally dismissed in 2008 thanks to developments in DNA technology, many still suspect that she accidentally did this in a fit of rage and then covered it up. From the outside, Patsy was your pleasant and influential suburban mother of two, known for her beauty pageant winning daughter, John Benet, and the lavish Christmas party she threw every year. So, let's see. And I think the main reason for that was the handwriting that matched, and the note that demanded $118,000 was kind of suspicious for her because that was the amount that he got for his bonus. It was a very specific amount. The next person was the father. So police arrived at the crime scene that morning after Christmas. And so John Ramsey and his neighbor, Fleet White, went to search the house for anything unusual. Ramsey made a beeline straight for the basement cellar where he immediately found his deceased child. So though he'd been told to leave everything where he found it, he picked her up, carried the body upstairs, removed a piece of tape from the child's mouth and placed her down. He even covered her up with a throw blanket, further destroying any physical evidence. So that's when people started to think that he knew too much, and kind of started to see him as suspicious. So the other person was the brother. So John and Patsy Ramsey, kind of shielded him from the press. He had an interview with Dr. Phil recently, even though, again, he was dismissed from this case in 2008 with the evidence that they found, but he wanted to clear the air. So he was 29 years old at the time, and kind of grinned through the interview, so people found that a bit odd. So after that, CBS aired the case of John Benet Ramsey, which was a 2-part documentary that reinvestigated the evidence of the crime with FBI and forensic experts. And the documentary kind of leaned their suspicions towards Burke Ramsey as they closed the possibility could without making any kind of formal accusation. So the team set up a compelling theory, which was he suspected that, the injury to the little girl's head was with the blunt, heavy flashlight seen in the photo on the kitchen counter in the crime scene photos. He claimed that the flashlight fit the 8.5-inch gash in her skull to perfection. So the flashlight became even more suspicious when tied to the pineapple scenario. The theory that suggested John Benet had taken a slice of fruit from Burke's late-night snack found at one on the dining room table. An undigested piece of pineapple was found in the child's stomach during the autopsy, leading him to strike her with the nearby flashlight out of anger. And lastly, the wounds on John Benet's back, previously assumed to have come from an encounter with a stun gun, were consistent with the edges of one of the Burke's boys' train tracks. So they suggested that Burke may have used this to poke his sister's body for response. That was another person. Another theory was a town drifter, Gary Olivia, who was a 32-year-old man in Boulder, Colorado. And another theory was the electrician of the family. So that was another. His name was Michael Helgoth, who worked in a nearby auto salvage yard. so he was 26 at the time. Another person was a school teacher. So, former school teacher John Mark Carr confessed out of the blue to the 1996 John Benet case. So he was arrested in Thailand as well. The housekeeper was another suspect. So Linda Hoffman Pugh had worked for the family as their housekeeper, and her husband was their handyman, so it wasn't surprising that she was known to carry a key into the home. And during the investigation of John Benet's murder, Hoffman Pugh didn't even begin to fit the profile the police were after. But she didn't hold back on voicing her suspicions that Patsy Ramsey had accidentally done it. That said, Patsy claimed to the investigators that Hoffman Pugh was struggling for money and had asked for a loan of several $1,000s, which Ramsey had declined. Police showed up at Pugh's home the night of the murder and asked 57-year-old housekeeper to write the number $180,000 on a piece of paper, and reportedly took her fingerprints and several strands of her hair. She then testified in front of a grand jury for a total of 8 hours. So the Hoffman Pugh theory asserted that the housekeeper led a trusting John Benet down into the basement that night in an attempt to trick her employers into leaving money for her ransom. So familiar with the home and the family schedule, Hoffman Pugh makes a convenient suspect, and without an alibi, she was asleep in her bed while her husband allegedly slept on the couch. There's room to speculate she could have been involved. So far, all evidence says that she wasn't. The town Santa as well was another theory. So that is the story of John Benet. Let me know what you think. I'm interested to hear.